From rushed weddings made to stop wars, to carefully planned unions that accidentally caused them, from love matches that collapsed empires to political marriages that quietly reshaped the globe, these are the 10 royal marriages that rewrote history far beyond the wedding night. Isabella I of Castile and Ferdinand II of Aragon, 1469. In 1469, Isabella of Castile married Ferdinand of Aragon with one goal: control. Spain didn't exist yet. Iberia was fractured, unstable, and still fighting its last Muslim kingdom. This marriage fixed that. Castile brought money. Aragon brought armies. Together, they centralized power and crushed Granada in 1492, ending nearly 800 years of Islamic rule in Iberia. Spain became Catholic, unified, and aggressive. With no enemies left in home, they looked outward. That same year, they funded Christopher Columbus. The result wasn't discovery, it was conquest. Empires rose. Gold flooded Europe. Entire civilizations collapsed. Spanish law, language, and religion spread across continents. The emissary marriage also unleashed the Inquisition and mass expulsions of Jews and Muslims, tearing apart communities that had existed for centuries. By the early 1500s, Spain was the world's first global superpower, all of it traced back to one wedding. But building an empire was easy compared to what happened when a king couldn't produce a son.
Henry VIII of England and Catherine of Aragon. In 1509, Henry VIII married Catherine of Aragon for one reason: stability. She was Spanish royalty, experienced, respected, and politically perfect. For nearly 20 years, the marriage worked. England was Catholic, Europe was calm. Then Henry needed a son. Catherine gave him daughters. Henry blamed God and the Pope. He demanded an annulment. Rome refused, pressured by Catherine's nephew, the Holy Roman Emperor. Henry's response was simple: he broke the church. In 1534, Henry declared himself head of the Church of England. Monasteries were destroyed. Church land was seized. England became Protestant by royal ego. This wasn't just religion, it rewired power. Wealth shifted to the crown. Dissent became treason. England isolated itself from Catholic Europe and prepared for invasion by building a navy. That navy later built an empire. Catherine was discarded. Europe split in two. Centuries of religious war followed, all because one king wanted a male heir. But breaking with God was still survivable. The next marriage turned family into a weapon.
Queen Victoria and Prince Albert. In 1840, Queen Victoria married Prince Albert and accidentally rebranded the British monarchy. Before Albert, kings were loud, corrupt, and politically dangerous. After Albert, the crown became respectable, domestic, safe. Albert wasn't just a husband, he was a manager. He pushed the monarchy out of politics and into symbolism, just in time. Europe exploded with revolutions in 1848, but Britain's crown survived because it no longer ruled anything directly. Albert also sold Britain to the world. The Great Exhibition of 1851 showed off British industry, wealth, and power like a global sales pitch. The empire followed. Together, Victoria and Albert produced 9 children and married them into every major royal house in Europe. It was supposed to prevent war. Instead, it connected everyone who would fight World War I. By 1914, cousins were bombing cousins. Empires collapsed, but the monarchy survived again, reduced, symbolic, untouchable. Their marriage didn't just shape Britain, it redesigned monarchy itself. But family peace plans failed once before. Next, a marriage turned land into an empire overnight. Henry II of England and Eleanor of Aquitaine. In 1152, Eleanor of Aquitaine married Henry Plantagenet, and Europe immediately had a problem. Eleanor wasn't just a bride, she was land, vast land. Aquitaine was richer than the French crown itself. 2 years later, Henry became Henry II of England, and suddenly the English king controlled more of France than the French king did. This marriage created the Angevin Empire, stretching from Scotland to the Pyrenees. France panicked, England got powerful, and Europe locked itself into 3 centuries of war. French kings spent generations trying to claw back Eleanor's lands. That struggle became the 100 Years' War, which bled both nations dry and accidentally created modern nationalism, standing armies, and permanent taxation. Eleanor also changed culture. Her courts popularized courtly love, poetry, and chivalry, reshaping European identity. Their sons included Richard the Lionheart and King John. John lost most of Eleanor's lands and was forced to sign the Magna Carta in 1215, limiting royal power forever. One marriage turned romance into empire, war, and constitutional law. But land wasn't the only thing marriages could weaponize. Next, a wedding converted an entire civilization.
Jadwiga of Poland and Jogaila of Lithuania. In 1386, a 10-year-old queen married a pagan warlord, and Europe quietly changed direction. Jadwiga of Poland married Jogaila, Grand Duke of Lithuania, on one condition: convert. Jogaila agreed. He became Władysław II Jagiello. Lithuania became Christian, and the last pagan state in Europe vanished overnight. This marriage created the Polish-Lithuanian Union, one of the largest and most powerful states the continent had ever seen, stretching from the Baltic to the Black Sea. It immediately broke the power of the Teutonic Knights, who had built an entire crusading industry around attacking Lithuania. At Grunwald in 1410, the new union crushed them permanently. The marriage didn't just redraw borders, it built a system, an elective monarchy, religious tolerance, noble democracy. While the rest of Europe burned heretics, this state survived through compromise. For centuries, it blocked Ottoman expansion and checked Russian growth. Its eventual collapse in the 18th century traumatized Eastern Europe. But the marriage itself proved something dangerous. Faith, borders, and identity could all be rewritten by contract. Next, a conqueror tried to marry legitimacy itself.
Napoleon I and Marie-Louise of Austria. In 1810, Napoleon married his enemy's daughter and called it peace. Marie-Louise was a Habsburg. Napoleon had spent a decade humiliating her family, dismantling their empire, and erasing the Holy Roman Empire entirely. Now he wanted legitimacy, an heir, and acceptance from old Europe. The marriage delivered a son, Napoleon II, and briefly froze the continent. Kings stopped attacking, courts held their breath, but Europe didn't buy it. To revolutionaries, Napoleon had sold out. To monarchs, he was still a threat wearing borrowed blood. When Napoleon invaded Russia in 1812 and failed, the illusion shattered. Austria turned on him. The coalition reformed. Waterloo followed. The marriage didn't save Napoleon, but it scared Europe enough to change how power worked. After his fall, monarchs rebuilt the continent at the Congress of Vienna, balancing bloodlines, borders, and alliances to prevent another Napoleon. The modern diplomatic system was born. Next, a marriage didn't legitimize power, it invented female rule. Peter the Great and Catherine I of Russia. In 1712, Russia's future married a peasant. Peter the Great took Catherine, a former servant and war captive, and made her empress. This wasn't romance, it was revolution. Russian czars traditionally married noblewomen to keep the old elites loyal. Peter ignored them all. Catherine earned her place by surviving campaigns, calming mutinies, and managing Peter himself. The message was clear. Rank no longer came from blood, it came from usefulness. This marriage backed Peter's westernization program and crushed the old boyar class. When Peter died in 1725,
Catherine didn't disappear. She became Empress Catherine I, the first woman to rule Russia. That single precedent unlocked a century of female rulers, including Elizabeth and Catherine the Great. Under them, Russia expanded, modernized, and became a European superpower. What started as an unthinkable marriage rewired Russian politics and proved loyalty mattered more than lineage. But sometimes marriages weren't about power or reform. Sometimes they were about ending centuries of hatred quietly. Margaret Tudor and James IV of Scotland. In 1503, England and Scotland tried peace by marriage because nothing else had worked. Princess Margaret Tudor married James IV of Scotland under the Treaty of Perpetual Peace. The name was optimistic. Border raids stopped, diplomats relaxed, and for a moment, the two most violent neighbors in Britain pretended the past didn't exist. Then reality returned. James IV died fighting England at Flodden in 1513, and the peace collapsed. But the marriage had planted a time bomb. Margaret's bloodline survived. A century later, England ran out of Tudors. In 1603, Margaret's great-grandson, James VI of Scotland, inherited the English throne as James I. No conquest, no invasion, just paperwork. The crowns united. Centuries of warfare ended overnight. This led directly to the Acts of Union in 1707 and the birth of Great Britain. One wedding quietly achieved what armies never could. But peace marriages weren't always quiet. Sometimes they ignited global wars.
Louis XIV of France and Maria Theresa of Spain. In 1660, Europe tried to end a century of war with a wedding. Louis XIV married Maria Theresa of Spain to seal the Treaty of the Pyrenees and stop France and Spain from tearing each other apart. On paper, it worked. Maria Theresa renounced her claim to the Spanish throne in exchange for a massive dowry. One problem: Spain never paid it. Louis noticed and waited. When Spain's Habsburg line collapsed decades later, Louis claimed their empire for his grandson, using that unpaid dowry as legal fuel. Europe exploded. The War of the Spanish Succession dragged every major power into a global conflict, fought across Europe, the Americas, and the seas. Cities burned. Empire shifted. The war ended in 1714 with a Bourbon on the Spanish throne and strict rules to stop France from owning everything. It broke Habsburg dominance and rewired European balance of power politics forever. One unpaid wedding bill reshaped the world. But the final marriage didn't cause a war, it killed absolute monarchy itself.
William III of Orange and Mary II of England. In 1677, a marriage quietly prepared a revolution. William of Orange married Mary, heir to the English throne, merging the world's two strongest Protestant naval powers. When Mary's father, James II, pushed England toward Catholic absolutism, Parliament panicked. In 1688, they invited William and Mary to invade. They did. James fled. No civil war, no executions, just regime change. This became the Glorious Revolution. In 1689, William and Mary accepted the Bill of Rights, surrendering absolute power forever. Parliament became supreme. Kings became contractual employees. The marriage also imported Dutch finance, creating the Bank of England and the modern credit system. Britain became rich, stable, and unstoppable. This constitutional model spread to America and beyond. One marriage didn't just change a country, it ended divine right monarchy as a global norm. Royal weddings usually made heirs. This one made democracy. What began as private vows ended as public consequences. Borders shifted, faiths split, empires rose, and entire centuries changed direction, all because the wrong people married at exactly the wrong moment.